With surfing, it's all about shifting weight, and it's all about your leverage within the turn. Those little movements are huge because you have to be so concentrated and know, like, if I feel something here or there, I have to shift away from it or shift my weight or pull my arm up. Doing a turn, once you start pushing on your board, you start to slow down. So it's about finding that place where you're going to be able to push hard and maintain the speed all the way through. But once I was able to figure out how to like push hard and then simultaneously like shift that weight and then turn my head over my front shoulder, everything just kind of flowed through. When we're on tour and everyone's like going to feel other guys' boards and like, oh, what are these guys riding? And like, what can I pull from that? Or like, you know, like what training are they doing? And like, what's working for them? Whether it's mindset or technique, surfers are talking about it all the time.
Welcome to the Basics of Surf podcast. Very excited. We got Zeke Lau in the house. I'm so excited because you've been a longtime hero of mine. I've been watching you forever. Just incredible surfer on the CT, just getting some crazy results. Always been rooting for you. You're kind of like Rocky in my viewpoint, you know, like a Sonny Garcia. And it's always been so exciting watching you on tour, and very excited to now finally get to chat about you, your story, all the surfing. I know that you're obsessed with training and all that, so I want to dive into all kind of the different approaches that you have. But thinking we just kind of start with the entire story, start back from the beginning. But first, no, just thanks for joining, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, for sure. Stoked to be on the podcast, and thank you for having me.
Sick. Well, why don't we just start with kind of where you came from? Because I know you have a really interesting story. You don't have that traditional surfing background. How did you get into surfing?
Yeah, I guess it was weird. My parents were both like land sport people. So my dad went to college and played football. My mom was playing like volleyball and softball and stuff. And just at the time when they had me, a bunch of my dad's friends were super into surfing and they were into it. So I was just at the beach a lot. And, you know, from a young age, I think I learned how to swim when I was like 3. And my dad was having me on the front of his board already. And I just loved the ocean. That was just the main thing for me. Was I always wanted to go to the beach, whether it was just rolling around the shore break or playing around and swimming at the beach, or, you know, anything to be in the water and be in the ocean was, you know, that's all I wanted to do from as long as I could remember. And, you know, I actually grew up playing a lot of other sports like soccer, basketball, baseball, and surfing was always just a different connection, a different passion for it. I felt like it was just easy and natural for me, and I always just wanted to do it. I never felt like, you know, going to a soccer practice, I was always just like, oh, I don't want to go, you know. And surfing was just like, when's the next time someone's going to take me to the beach? You know, I just couldn't get enough. And I think that was the big difference for me, and the difference my dad and my parents seen, and they just supported me and, you know, always wanted me to, you know, go surf and be able to do the things that I wanted to do. And surfing was just, you know, I loved it. And so I started surfing at a young age. My dad just was very into it at that time, and, you know, he just took me as much as we could. And next thing I know, I was in contests and, you know, doing the whole deal. But it was definitely untraditional, where, you know, a lot of the friends that I have and a lot of the people that, you know, are heavy into, you know, competitive surfing and stuff, their parents have done it, or like, you know, someone has been in the industry and, you know, brought them up into it. So we were kind of outsiders in the beginning, but, you know, we met a lot of cool people and had a lot of good guidance from, you know, early on. So it kind of all just came together. But like I said, it was just so natural, and, you know, I just couldn't get enough of it.
Well, it's interesting because your dad he was a coach, right? He coached football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Do you
he still is. He's still coaching football. He coaches high school football here in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah. So the thing about like football is the approach to training is so different from surfing. You know, like with surfing,
Mm-hmm.
especially back in the day, the approach to surfing is like, oh, just go and surf. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
think about training. It's not as structured as, you know, when you think about traditional ball sports, land sports. The training and the approach is so structured. Do you think that he took some of that, or you got some of that from him in terms of your approach, the way you approached surfing, that made you different in a way, or how did that play into things?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, everything he preached to me, he was like in full coach mode all the time. and he still is. He's just a coach and by nature, I think, and he loves doing that. But surfing's a very different sport. You know, first of all, it's individual, so like it's only you out there, and a lot of times, you know, for me at a young age, I never thought of it like that. You know, so he was always just pushing on me. You got to practice. You got to do this. You know, always trying to find like a competitive edge in some way, or watch other guys, see what they do. But at a young age, obviously, when you're a grom and you're young, you're just like, dude, I don't care. I just want to go surf.
Yeah.
If I have a jersey on, or if I don't, it's all the same to me. Um, but he definitely instilled that, you know, putting in the extra work, or like trying to improve all the time. Every time you're doing it, improve, you know, what you're doing and how you're doing it, how you can get better, looking at other people for inspiration or motivation to see how they do it, and figure out all these different approaches to kind of help you grow and help you learn and help you, you know, get better at what you're doing. And for me, surfing was like that. So a lot of times for me getting better, I always watched other guys. Like on my favorite surfers, I would try and like watch a bunch of videos, and I'll be like, okay, I'll hold my hands here and like do this and like draw those lines, and I want to ride like the boards that they're riding. That was pretty much how I learned at a young age, was just like watching and trying to like kind of mimic what my favorite surfers did. And then I don't think it was till like way later on when I really started getting heavy into like the amateurs and like trying to do good at nationals and all these things, where I really was like, okay, maybe I need to train or get stronger here or get stronger there. Um, but yeah, my dad definitely instilled that, you know, hard work mentality and putting in extra time, and really focusing in on trying to get better at certain things to grow in your craft. Um, so that definitely molded me and instilled a lot of values that I hold today, for sure.
Yeah. And you grew up in town, right? And how
Yeah.
did that mold your approach to surfing as well? Because you can think about like these are all these other guys that grew up on the North Shore, which is a
Mhm.
very different kind of area. How did that change your approach?
Yeah, growing up in town is different. You know, in Honolulu, like, you know, it's very busy. Surfing's pretty secondary. A lot of the people that grow up in town and surf, it's just for fun, and like people do it because they love it. Where you go on the North Shore, people are making careers out of it. You know, people surf pipeline and make their whole career, and you know they do. It's just a whole different approach to it. And growing up in town, you always have this factor of like, oh, the waves don't get as big in town. You know, you got to go to the North Shore and prove yourself. And you know, to me, that was always like something that I had like on the horizon, to always like, yeah, I got to go out there and prove myself. I got to push myself to go surf bigger waves. And to be honest, I was definitely not comfortable in bigger waves when I was young. It was
Hmm.
very hard for me. I remember we'd show up to events, and you know, I was doing mini grounds in NSSA. I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, and we show up to Sunset Beach, and the waves are huge, and it's firing, but like it was scary to me at the time. And I remember not wanting to go out.
Huh.
And my dad's like, absolutely not. You're gonna at least try. And if you don't catch a wave, whatever, but you're going out. And so I was always pushing through those boundaries. And, you know, I'm just like a typical kid from town. I surf Waikiki. I grew up surfing Waikiki, and it was like 1 to 2 foot most of the time. And it's fun and enjoyable. There's no real risk factor there, where the North Shore is definitely a lot of risk, a little bit more heavier water, a lot more going on. And that was definitely something where I had to push myself to do and get used to, and get me outside of my comfort zone. And you know, that event at Sunset Beach, for context, like John was a few years older than me, but he was still in the same division, and it was like 6 to 8 foot sunset, and this guy was just like doing what John does now, but just back then. So it was like crazy to see him just surfing those types of waves and how comfortable he was. So it was always like that benchmark of always trying to chase that and go, okay, that's what I kind of need to do. And you know, finding the courage to like push myself into it at a young age. But, you know, from town, for me, it was just like, how much do you want it? You know, if you want it, you're going to make sure you're out there and push yourself to be out there on those bigger swells, and make sure you're there. And you know, I grew up going to school in town, which is also a little more um, unconventional with surfing. A lot of the young talent, those prodigy kids, were always like homeschooled, and they made sure they're in the water as much as they could. So, you know, I only had small windows where I could actually get out to the North Shore, and I really had to capitalize on that. So it was really a matter of, how much did I want it? And, I definitely knew I wanted it really bad. And, every weekend that I could, I tried to get out there, whether it was finding rides off friends or staying at people's houses to, get the opportunities to surf in those types of waves.
Yeah. But sometimes I wonder if growing up in town is almost like an advantage too, because
Mhm.
I mean, you get to surf a lot smaller waves, and that
Yeah.
makes you a better small wave surfer. I remember watching some video that you did. You're like doing mock heats at like in like 1 foot waves at Sandy Beach, and you're like throwing airs, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
I don't know, John can do it in that crappy of a wave. You know what I'm saying? And there's
Yeah.
so many great Hawaiian surfers that are from town as well, like Chris Moore, the Moniz family
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
I don't know. Did it? What do you think is harder, coming from being good at surfing smaller waves and then transitioning to surfing bigger waves, or the reverse?
To be honest, I think they're pretty equal. So a
Mhm.
lot of the guys that are really comfortable in bigger waves, they really struggle and they have to push themselves to get on smaller waves. Where maybe like for me, I was always surfing smaller waves and it was almost just getting over the fear factor, the uncomfortable feeling of being in heavier water and deeper, bigger ocean with a lot more energy. So that just took a little bit of time where, it might be a little harder for the guys that surf firing 10-foot, pipe and sunset and Haleiwa to actually want to go out and find crappy waves to get good at.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar. It's just, getting out of your comfort zone and wanting to do that. And I mean, you obviously seen John be able to just transition to, you know, up his small wave surfing to get on tour and then become a world champion. You got to be able to do everything. And that's always something that I wanted to do that intrigued me, was being able to surf on any given day possible. Whenever I
Yeah.
show up to the beach, I want to be able to surf and feel comfortable and know that I can go and perform in any condition. And I feel like that's what makes a good surfer. And coming from Hawaii, um, surfing big waves is just, it's just a part of the culture. Like
Right.
I always felt growing up, like, oh, if you don't surf big waves, you kind of can't consider yourself a professional surfer. So I
Yeah.
always like tried to push that. Um, but yeah, I think it's pretty equal. You
It
got to
is.
want to just learn and be willing and be open to learning different styles of surfing, different techniques, and change your technique based on, whether you're surfing bigger, heavier waves or surfing smaller waves. Like you got to be able to just adapt. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's what makes it fun. If you're that type of person that is always wanting to get better and willing to learn different ways to do things, like, it's endless.
Hey everyone, my name is Van, and I'm an everyday surfer that's just obsessed with improving. And I wanted to take everything that I've learned, everything that I've struggled with, all the mistakes that I've learned along the way, and share it with you to help you become the best surfer that you can be. And I'm super lucky on this podcast. I get to interview the world's top pros, shapers, coaches, and take you along on my journey as I try to learn, uncover all the gold so you can apply to your own surfing. So hopefully you're going to get some value out of this. And the best way you can support me is just simply by sharing this podcast with whoever else you think may benefit from it. I also have been working really hard for a long time on something that I think is going to help a ton of people. I know that it was a game changer for myself as well. But more to come on that over the next coming months. I'm super excited. Thank you for all the support. And for those of you just joining for the first time, welcome to the Basis community. Super stoked to have you. For sure. I don't, for some reason, for me, it seems like psychologically it would be easier to be good at small waves and then like, all right, I'm pushing myself trying to
Yeah.
surf bigger waves, but at
Yeah.
least you're surfing like bigger waves and it's kind of like more
Yeah. Yeah.
fun
It's kind of
versus
more
if
fun.
you're like, oh, I got to just go grind in 1 foot waves and you suck at them. That just, and you're just going to spend a lot of
Yeah.
time doing it. That sounds hard to me psychologically anyway, but
Yeah, for sure. I think it definitely is. Um, there's definitely more reward when you're surfing bigger waves. You know what I mean? Like I always like push myself to do it, and then when I did it, it was so rewarding. It was like, oh my god, can't believe I did it. I was so sick, and then it pushed me to go keep wanting to do it and keep pushing myself. Where sometimes in smaller waves, even though you're doing it good, might not feel that good. So
right.
like it's like that balance is a little different. But surfing smaller waves, I think for me growing up, always just being hungry to surf no matter what was kind of my advantage, to where like, I surf, you know, 1 to 2 foot waves majority of the time, for me. So
Yeah.
anything bigger than that was just like, oh, this is a reward,
Yeah. That drive and that work ethic is definitely kind of the key thing that I think about when when I think about you, I'm always like, this guy's grinding hard. He's sick. Like it's such an inspiration. Well, so when you were coming up and you're, trying to get, make it on the CT, you're doing the QS and all that. And so was there anything, um, like technique wise where you felt like, okay, I have to level up. This is where I need to focus. Was it just stepping up into bigger waves, or was it, I remember talking to Dylan Lightfoot, and he lives at J Bay. So he only surfs
Yeah.
right hand points. And he's like, dude, I didn't know how to surf backside. So when I'm trying to, when I was trying to qualify, he was like, I had to learn how to surf backside. Well, were there any things that you struggled with kind of when you were coming up and trying to make it to that next level?
Um, for me, it's pretty it's pretty crazy because I never really focused on like my actual technique on the wave as much as like reading the ocean. I feel
Mm,
like me being in like to in town and we surf like Alamana Bowls and Kiwalos and like Alamana Beach Park and stuff. That's where I grew up surfing 90% of my life. And dude, the waves are perfect. It's never onshore. It's always offshore and like clean. It might be small, but at least it's like really clean. You sit in one spot. I grew up surfing reef breaks.
yeah.
So like all you got to do is learn the reef, learn where the channel is. You sit in this one spot, the same waves and come every time. So for me, surfing beach breaks was kind of one of those things to where like I haven't surfed beach breaks that much. And you go on the QS and like it's all beach breaks. Like every wave you show up to is like a beach break, whether it's like 1 foot dribbling onshore beach break and has like a little rip bowl you got to figure out, or it's like 6 foot closeout beach break. And a lot of times I would show up and just be so lost. Like, I don't even know how to approach this. I don't know where to sit. Everywhere looks like a closeout. So like, how do I figure this out? So a lot of the time it was like me trying to figure out how to read different types of waves and beach breaks are one of those things where I really had to like buckle down and figure out, which were actually way harder than bigger waves for me because even bigger waves on the North Shore, it's the same type of deal, like reef breaks. You sit here, you figure out your lineups, and then you kind of everything is just based off of where the waves are coming in and finding your spot that you're comfortable with, and then you find the wave that you want to surf, and then everything kind of flows from there. So a lot of it was me being able to transition to the beach break surfing, and even like how you surf the wave. A lot of times, like when you're surfing reef breaks, it's always these sections, and these sections pop up in the same places every time. So I'm usually racing down the line and finding those sections where beach breaks, if you do that, you're gonna miss the whole wave. Like the waves are real short and they're real compact. So you really gotta fit your maneuvers in really quickly.
Mm,
And I
mm.
remember being on the QS in the beginning and I was just like, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I gotta drop straight down to the bottom, get the first turn, and
Yeah.
then get a finishing turn, which is so odd to me because I was so used to like dropping down, having so much time, do it like a high line, get all my speed, and then load up for a turn. Where like you can't really do that in beach breaks. So it's like changing that approach and learning what that is and when to do it and when not to do it. So I think beach breaks were one of those things I really had to try and figure out.
Was there any like was there anything that you learned, a tip that maybe you got from a coach, anything that shifted in the way you approached it that helped unlock these beach breaks, or was it just simply putting in the time and just figuring out how to read them?
In the beginning, it was just putting in time and just getting used to like reading the ocean and knowing where to be and knowing what to look for. Like a lot of times, I didn't even know what to look for. When I'm surfing reef breaks, I look for the biggest one that's going to break right here, and it's going to have the most energy and offer me like the most like the biggest best section to do a maneuver. Where beach breaks, you're almost looking for these like little peaks that almost fade out because either way the wave's going to close out, so it'll give you more time to like put your maneuvers in. But it wasn't until I started working with Jake Patterson, he really broke it down and taught me like, hey, you're racing off down the line way too much. Like you're
Mm,
missing all the opportunity on the wave. Like you're selecting good waves, but um you're just passing by sections and you're going down the line where your surfing looks rushed and things are not flowing. You're not like flowing with the speed of the wave. I'm kind of like outrunning everything. So um he definitely taught me the whole idea of like dropping straight down into your first maneuver and then picking that wave that's going to allow you to drop straight down and line up that first either turn or snap that which will end up setting up the whole wave. So Jake really, yeah, helped me out with that and helped me out how to learn and figure that out, and ended up writing different boards and figuring out what boards work better in those types of situations.
Yeah, I remember when he was like coaching you and Kanoa and that whole crew of you guys,
Yeah,
and yeah, that was so sick how it was just like all of you guys, and he seemed like a magician of a coach as well. Like he's retired now, he isn't coaching anymore, right? But
he
or is he?
retired for a little bit, but I think he's back. This
Oh,
year is like his first year back.
oh, really?
Um, which was sick. But back then it was awesome. Like I was so fortunate to get him in that time where his coaching was at its peak, and he was working with the select few. Luckily, I got on Quicksilver at that time, and they kind of just fed me right into that program. But just being around those guys too, like I was around like Leo and Kanoa and a lot of the European guys who all they do is surf beach breaks. So me just being able to spar at them and run heats, and I remember the first year they were just smoking me and everything. And through time, then I having those sparring partners and seeing those different approaches helped me learn, and I picked up a lot of things from them. And it's crazy because those kids were like years younger than me. I think they're like 4 or 5 years younger than me. So it's crazy when you're learning from kids that are so much younger and stuff, and they have so much experience. Like I felt like our experience level was kind of the same because they had traveled for
Mm.
years and years and years and gone to all these tour events and been around the scene so much that they actually had a lot of you know experience in those types of things. So
Right.
I definitely learned a lot from those guys.
And what was it, dude? Like surfing, like the events at Portugal or in France, like Hossegger, looked like so hectic. Like,
Yeah,
what was it like competing in those events?
Portugal and France were like, first of all, Portugal, because we have a lot of QSs there, was like a huge struggle for me. Like I
Yeah.
could not make a heat in Portugal. I always remember it being so windy and just like I couldn't even get over the fact that they were running the contest. I was like, I can't believe we're surfing right here, right now, and the tides and like how much things are changing, like how like much you have to adapt to so many things going on was a little overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
Um, but Portugal was definitely a learning curve. It was crazy to like show up there for the first time in surf events. I remember paddling out and you can't hear the announcers. You can barely figure out where you are in the lineup. Waves are breaking everywhere, and I just would come in from a heat and just go, I don't even know what happened. I don't even know what I did or what I didn't do. Like I was so lost. And that was all pre or before the times where I was working with Jake. So, all those experiences I was able to just go, okay, like that's how I felt back then, and then kind of go off of those experiences. And just, the hardest thing for me was like wanting the result right now,
Mm.
where it just took time. And I just had to just be patient and just, you know, the hardest thing about learning is like everyone's learning curve is different. Everyone learns at a different pace. And for me, I feel like I'm a little slow learner. Like I'm a creature of habit. So I like to do everything. I like to practice things. And if I do it more, then I'll be better at it and I'll be more comfortable. So it just took me a little bit more time. And that's like my whole approach with like training and surfing and stuff. Like the more situations that I put myself in for those things that I might not be as good at, the better and more chance I'll be able to pick it up more. So for me, it's always looking for those opportunities to get better as much as I can. So it'll give me more time and more reps.
Yeah, there's nothing that's hard work beats talent if the talent is unmotivated, right? You just got to put
Yeah,
that
for
time in,
sure.
and
Yeah.
you're gonna get there. That's so sick. I mean, training wise, it seems like you were. So here's something I don't understand, right? You're a pro
Mhm.
surfer, you're surfing all the time, and then you post this video where you're like paddling for hours. Like, like as a pro surfer, you still need to train your paddling. How important is paddling, as a pro surfer?
Paddling's huge, and I didn't learn that till like later on. Like I was super big into training, strength and conditioning. My body was always fit. I was always strong. I understood the whole concept of like injury prevention and making sure your body is, you know, a well-oiled machine. You just like you're strong in these different areas, you're flexible, and you're ready to perform when the opportunity presents itself. I never thought of the whole like paddling thing until I got like on tour, and I realized like how much open ocean waves you're surfing, and how much like jockeying for position there is, and how much paddling is actually that edge to like, paddling is essentially like the base for surfing. If you can't get yourself in the position to catch the wave, if you can't catch the wave, then you're not even going to be able to perform. So over the years on the QS and qualifying for the tour, I realized like paddling is huge. And I was so unversed with that whole like water training thing. I did some swimming growing up. I used to train like before school. This guy used to train us, and we used to do a lot of swimming. But for me, it was so mindless. Like he was making the program. I would just show up. He told us what to do, and I didn't even realize how much it played a factor into like what I was doing until I wasn't doing it anymore. And I was like, well, I need to like really keep that up with the paddling muscles and making sure everything is strong. And it's more of an endurance thing, because I
Mhm.
found a lot of times it was more later on, like through the back end of the events, where I'd been surfing for basically a week, and you're surfing as hard as you can in your heats. And, finals day, you surf like 3 or 4 times, sometimes five, just depending on how they run the event. And the last, like the quarters and the semis and finals, I was like cramping up, and I felt like sometimes I would feel overwhelmed with like, if there's a lot of water moving, like I was scared to like go get in position, or like scared to move, because I was like, oh, I'm going to get too tired. I'm not going to be able to surf the wave.
Really?
So like those things came into my mind. I was like, I need to start doing something else. And that's when I was like, yeah, I'm going to figure out how to get a prone paddle board and start doing these paddle runs. We actually have great paddle runs right by my house where I live. So I was like, I'm going to try and utilize that. And I started getting really into the paddling stuff. And that was really key for me. I felt like it really helped at waves like Sunset and
Mm.
waves like, Hossegor and stuff, where you're moving around like big lineups and stuff, and you have to get around and get in position as quick as possible. And once the paddling felt stronger, then my confidence level definitely increased, just because I knew like, oh, I can paddle and get in position or out paddle anyone.
That's fascinating. I mean, how many before you started this paddle training though? Like, how many hours a day were you surfing? I'm assuming like
Oh yeah. I'm still surfing. Like growing up, once I started really competing heavily on the QS, I was surfing like, we did like 2 or 3 sessions, probably like 6 to 8 hours a day minimum.
and then
You
on
know what I
top of
mean?
that,
And then on top of that, I try and find days where like, I'll get a couple paddles in.
wow.
And it's so crazy, because those paddle days, like I hated it. I was just like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I want to win. So
Yeah.
like I got to just push myself. And for me, it was more so just the mental aspect of paddling, because
Yeah.
it's so like, it's pretty grueling. Like I do like an 8 mile run from like Hawaii where I live, all the way to Waikiki. It's like 8 miles, and it's all downwind. And I basically had to learn how to do it. I had no idea how to read like open ocean
Mm.
swell, like the little bumps and the wind swell and stuff. And I had to learn how to read the ocean out there. And I kind of didn't have anyone teaching me. I was just going and just figure it out and just rely on my instinct to like get me through it. And I remember the first couple of times were pretty scary. I
Wow.
actually borrowed a friend's board, and the fin broke off, and I'm like a couple miles out, and I'm basically just like
Oh my God,
seesawing
dude.
for like 2.5 hours, just trying to get to the end destination, because my wife was picking me up on that side. But just like all those experiences, learning, and like I actually ended up getting really into it, which was really cool, because um from starting out from being something that I was so uncomfortable with and just hated doing, I actually ended up loving it, because just the mental charge I got, the whole mental self-talk, like everything going through your head through those times, actually played a huge factor in a lot of events and a lot of things that I've done later on, that I don't even think I consciously did that. It just happened that way. And I was like, wow, that's why, doing that type of training is good.
Wow, that still really blows me away because you're surfing 6 to 8 hours. You probably already have like an incredible base, and then sure, during the events, you're gonna
Mhm.
have like a week of surfing, but you're surfing like a heat or two, a couple of heats a day, except for the finals day, and then you might be surfing a bunch. But you're still like, I got a paddle train just to get that extra edge, and I think that that is. But it sounds like to me that a big part of it is just having that psychological edge where it's like, oh, I
Mhm.
know that I have this in the tank. Like
Yeah.
I might have to sprint to get in a position, and then that wave comes, and it's like I still got the gas to like get into the wave, and you need that just to have
Mhm.
make sure you got everything in your back pocket and you're ready to just like throw down whenever you need to.
Yeah, it's not only like, competing, it's like in bigger surf with more consequence, like, surfing pipe, I would say, like, 70 to 80% of surfing pipe is about paddling and about positioning, and the way you where you take off and where you're able to put yourself in the lineup is gonna dictate how you surf that wave. So, the paddling definitely helps with all of that, and how hard you have to paddle to get into, bigger waves and stuff. If you're not at that, like, if your endurance level isn't high enough, you'll find, like, it's really hard to get the waves that, those bigger waves, those better waves that you initially want. It's really hard to get there if your paddling's not there. And I feel it instantly. Like, if my paddling endurance isn't up when I go surf in the wintertime, I'll know instantly by the first session. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not there. Like, I'm missing waves. I'm like seeing where waves are and not in position. It's just so frustrating to me. So, like, those moments right there, I just remember how that felt. And I'm like, that's why I have to paddle. So, like, I
Mm.
use all those experiences to kind of push me into my training. And yeah, so it was really cool. Like, paddling was something that I never thought I would do. I always thought it was just like a whole different sport or a different category, but it just makes total sense. It's like I I uh I compare it to like boxing. Like, boxers, their cardio level needs to be so high and their footwork needs to be so good, their endurance level needs to be able to withstand the whole fight. So they do a lot of road work. They run a lot, they do miles and miles and miles. I was like, it should be the same for surfers with paddling. Your paddling should be like at that level.
Right. And I think this applies to everyday surfers as well. I mean, there's tons of
Yeah.
surfers that like surf just on the weekend, but then they don't do
Mhm.
any training and they show up and they're just gassed. They catch
Yeah.
like two waves and they're like, I'm done, when if
Mhm.
they train, they would be in such better shape.
Yeah.
Um, and it is such an inspiration. And I mean, like how big are the boards you're riding at Pipe nowadays?
The boards we're riding at Pipe, my favorite number this year was a 6'9".
Six
So I'm riding a
nine.
6'9". It's a little longer. Like, I used to
Okay.
ride smaller boards, like 6'8", 6'6" was like my magic number. I loved it.
Yeah.
But now, I don't know. I'm trying to make it a little easier on myself to get in position, especially like with
Yeah.
crowds and stuff.
And
Like,
you're
I
a
want to
big
be in
guy.
position.
I mean, how much
Yeah.
do you
So,
weigh?
um, right now I'm about like 190.
Yeah.
I fluctuate between 190 and like 195. But when I was on tour and stuff, I was more around 180. So I was like riding a little smaller boards, a little less volume. Um, but yeah, the little longer board kind of helps with the paddling, getting position. A lot of it was like my approach to surfing pipe is a little different now, where I want to like get on like bigger waves, not only like the same like first reef ones that I usually catch. I want to try and like kind of get into a little bigger wave. So I was like kind of experimenting with a little bigger boards. I had a 7.6 and a 7.3 this year that I was trying out. So, I'm just changing approaches. But again, for me, it's like it's just learning. It's like
Yeah.
learning different approaches to ride waves and different ways, different places to take off and stuff. But
Yeah. Well,
my
what are
favorite my
yeah,
favorite number is like 6'6", 6'9".
got it. Got it. And so I'm curious, like, what are your goals now at Pipe? Like, are you just trying to get the wave of the winter, just get the biggest bomb now, or like, are you? It sounds like you're not trying to just sit on first reef and like just take off under the lip. What is your goal? Just this wave, like sickest longest barrel, or
Yeah, for me, it's just my personal journey. Like, I feel like I see waves at Pipe, and I'm like, why am I not on those waves? How do I get on those waves? And for me, I'm just trying to get my personal best wave at Pipe ever.
yeah,
And that's kind of what the journey is for me. So I'm kind of changing my approach and changing where I sit. Um, yeah, for me, I just want to get a really big pipe wave. I feel like I got a lot of like really good backdoor waves. and it's so weird. The lineup's small, but like where I sit to surf backdoor is like a total different spot than where you need to be sitting to get those crazy waves at pipe. And I feel like backside barrel riding is like a little challenge for me. Like I can do it and stuff, but I want to be able to like do it better and get bigger waves and be more comfortable in it. I want to be in a 10-foot barrel at pipe and like be able to let go of my rail and stuff. So that's kind of where that journey is for me. That's my personal goal, is just to kind of get bigger, better waves at pipe going left instead of just backdoor.
Sounds scary. Fuck.
That's the thing. It's super scary. So I'm like battling a lot of those things where I'm terrified of the wave most of the time. I'm super scared, and I've hit my head pretty bad at pipe to where I almost knocked out. I got a concussion, and it was pretty scary at that moment. It kind of shifted my whole approach to pipe, where back then I rode small boards. I took off wherever I wanted, and I just like would free fall and fall on waves that I probably shouldn't have been falling on, and was just getting away with it. And then eventually I hit the bottom, and it just changed everything. I was like, I don't want to hit the bottom anymore. I want to be coming out of every wave.
Yeah.
I need to figure out how to be perfect out there. So, I feel like that's the challenge with pipe and stuff. Guys want to, the longer you surf pipe, the more time you put out there is actually, it gets more dangerous because, you're putting yourself in more situations. You're putting yourself, in more dangerous situations, pushing yourself to get better waves. So you got to get, you can't get complacent and feel like, oh, I've surfed out here. I got it. The more I felt like that back then, and I was like, I've fallen on huge ones out here. I'm not going to hit the bottom. I'm good. Once I hit the bottom, I realized how crazy that is, and the reality of getting really injured and being in a scary situation. So
yeah,
I definitely am trying to stay sharp and still trying to push myself all at the same time. So
oh, who was it that got injured last season? Local guy. Was it last winter? Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
was it Kala? I think
yeah.
Kala got injured
Yeah.
a few years ago. It was pretty bad, and those are all of my friends, and I was surfing in that event and seeing it. Like, when those things happen, it's crazy because these guys surf out there all the time. It can happen to anyone, and what really intrigues me is guys like Jamie and John who surf out there so much more than anyone, and you never really see them getting injured, which is telling me how calculated they are, how well they know the wave, how dialed they are with their equipment and their training and their endurance. Everything's, where it needs to be. So, for me, that's my whole driving force right now, is to really push myself out there.
Well, now, I mean, Coral, he
Mm-hmm.
pretty much shapes the best four boards for pipe, I would imagine. What's that been like?
Yeah, it's
Especially
been
working with someone local now too,
yeah, it's been great. And actually that was one of the deciding factors with me actually switching over to Coral, was this whole journey of getting better at pipe. And I got a batch of boards from him that instantly changed my approach. And the boards felt so good out there, and I could tell they were shaped for there. And he has a lot of experience with shaping boards out there. He shapes for Jamie and all that. So I knew, I was like, if I want to, get better, my equipment needs to be at that level. So it's been great working with Wade, and I've learned so much about the boards and stuff. And I felt like my performances at pipe have increased since then. So I'm super stoked with it. And Wade's a great guy, and he actually grew up. He surfed pipe so much, and he still was. He actually got injured a few years ago, so he hasn't been surfing. But he was actually spending a lot of time out there, and you can tell when guys shape boards, you know, if they surf those waves or surf those types of waves, those boards work really good in those types of waves. Whether it's like JS at Snapper Rocks or DHD at Snapper Rocks, like Tokoro at Pipe is the equivalent to that.
Right. I mean, like, how crazy are you guys getting with the boards? Are you like, I don't know. I would imagine. Well, different surfers are probably different in the way that
Mm-hmm.
they go their relationship with shapers. I'm sure some are like super anal and they're like, oh, I want my rail to be exactly like this, and they were adjusting millimeters. What's your
Mm-hmm.
approach to it? Or are you more chill and you're like, I trust Wade,
No, I'm pretty meticulous. Like working with Channel Islands, I actually learned so much about boards and the design and what designs do what. And being on tour, you kind of have to be like that. You're always searching for that magic board that's going to allow you to perform and allow you to take your performance from here to here. And equipment on tour is everything. You notice a lot of guys are always just like searching and feeling boards and like trying to order a bunch of boards. And, the guys that work really closely with their shaper, you can tell because their equipment is just like, money. But yeah, I've worked a lot with Wade, and a lot of it's like the rails and stuff. I feel like he has the rocker and the bottoms of the boards really dialed for pretty much anywhere on the North Shore. So for me, it's just like getting the volume right, getting the rails where I like them. And I was doing a lot with that the last few years. And then this year, I like ordered a bunch of boards that like I told them like, hey, make all these changes. Like I want the rails pinched down,
Uh-huh.
maybe move the Y plane up, and like put more foam under the chest so I can paddle better on
Yeah.
these smaller boards. And then it kind of wasn't where I thought it would be. And
Huh.
I remember being out in the lineup with Jamie, and I was like, hey, what board, what board are you riding? And he told me the model. It's like a 4VC. That's like the standard, like Tokoro pipe board.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation. I was like, yeah, I mean, I was trying to change a bunch of stuff, but like, I feel like I'm not going in the right direction. And he was like, yeah, honestly, um, I love these boards. Like these are the only boards I'll ride at pipe and stuff. And I feel like these are the best and I don't change anything. And then, so I called up Wade and I was like, hey, whatever Jamie was riding, can you just make me a copy of that so I can try it? And it
Yeah.
was crazy. Like the first wave I got, I was like, oh my gosh, like this board felt way different than any of the other boards I was riding at pipe. So pretty much
Interesting.
now I'm just gonna order that same model.
Yeah, I guess Wade designed it like the way it is for a reason,
Yeah.
right?
If
Like,
if if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like I was trying to fix something that's perfectly fine. So, but I like to just experiment and I like to
yeah.
change stuff. If there's a chance that it might be good, I want to try it and make sure like it is or it isn't for sure. Because like at the same time, like I can ask Jamie what works for him, but I'm such a different surfer. I shift my weight different. I move my body different. My approach is different. So, you know, just because it works for him doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna work for me. But in this case, it did. So it's pretty
Mm.
sick. And luckily, me and Jamie are roughly around the same size, like same weight and stuff. So I just changed the volume a little bit just to make it my volume, and
Yeah.
thing worked incredible.
I'm actually kind of curious, you're talking about like the way you guys move, you recognize these differences with your approach to surfing.
Mhm.
Well, like, when you're chatting with other pro surfers, are you guys ever talking about technique and getting super nerdy about the technique? Or are you guys mainly talk about like mindset in the competition? Like,
Mhm.
what do pros like talk about with each other when you're like trying to figure out like, oh, what are we going to do next, for the next
Mhm.
contest? Like, what goes on in your brains?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I feel like a lot of surfers, like, I feel like now it's not as bad, but for sure, like back in the day and like old surf culture was always like to kind of keep everything on the
Yeah.
down low. Like if you have those conversations, don't let anybody know. And
Yeah.
I'm just good at it. I just show up and it just happens.
Yeah.
It created like this different aura about them. Like, oh, this guy's just so good. But honestly, like surfers are always talking about it. Like every time, like when we're on tour and surfers are staying together, like everyone's like going to feel other guys' boards and like, oh, what are these guys
Mm.
riding? And like, what can I pull from that? Or like, like what training are they doing and like what's working for them, whether it's mindset or technique. Servers are talking about it all the time, like especially the pro guys. Like
Yeah.
they're all nerds for it and they all are trying to figure out what's gonna like what's gonna be that little thing that kind of help them get over some little hump or get over a little challenge that they've been dealing with. And whether it's boards and equipment, whether it's training, whether it's like technique stuff, like um it's weird. I'm trying to think of who I talk about it with the most. I know guys like Griffin. Griffin's like a full nerd. Always like we used to nerd out about like what guys do you watch? Like if you're gonna go surf, like who do you watch and who do you want to surf like? And like it's almost like a cadence on the wave that you try and adapt and you try and like you try and copy because it's all this like the style and like how you transition your speed and stuff.
Right.
So a lot of it's just like I know at one point Griffin was watching a lot of Andy, and I tweak on Andy. That's like I
Yeah.
probably watch Andy more than anyone ever, and So we would nerd out about it and like always like be like, oh, he always keeps his arm here and like do this little stuff and be in the lineup joking around. And I'd be paddling out and he'd be like, oh, I seen you put your arm like that, like you're doing that the AI arm. So it's kind of funny, like surfers are nerds for it. You know, that's why they're so good at it. They wouldn't be where they are if
Right.
they weren't just totally obsessed with it.
That's funny because I remember watching some video and Mick Fanning was talking about Griffin and he was like, yeah, Griffin is obsessed. He's like a sponge.
Hmm.
He's just like constantly asking questions, which totally
Hmm.
makes sense, you know. I just interviewed Philippe, who was Hurley team manager, and
Yep.
he like spent like I don't remember how long, obscene amount of time with Kanoa, and all they were focusing on was just like front side carve, and they were just like
Uh-huh.
tweaking all these minute
Hmm.
details, just like, oh, you bend your front leg just a little bit more like this, and just shift your hips a little bit more like this,
Hmm.
and I would imagine at that level, it's just like those minor. It seems like minor tweaks are going to be the things that like result in the biggest difference, right? And you guys are all just trying to get that edge.
Yeah, for sure. Now that you bring it up, I talked a lot with Kanoa. Me and Kanoa would tweak out a lot about that stuff too, and a lot of it was boards. Like we'd always just be like tweaking out on boards or like seeing like, oh, the JSs look so good, or guys are riding pangs, or like, oh, I got this old school shape, like this is gonna let me do this or that. And it's just all of that. And I feel like when you get to a certain level, it's almost like in movies when you see them like in like big moments or things that are like kind of groundbreaking for that athlete, like when they show like that real slow motion like situation where like a basketball player is like in the air and they're like able to like move their body and everything's so slow and those little movements are like happening like milliseconds. Like
Right.
it's just crazy, like that actually happens. Like when we're surfing and we're really focused on trying to do something, like I can feel every little like shift in weight or where my arm was, and I know
Right.
exactly like, oh, I dropped my arm too early, or I came up too high, or I didn't turn my head, or like all those little things like really play a difference. And with surfing, it's all about shifting weight, and it's all about
Mm.
your leverage within the turn. After everything else, after you've had the right speed, draw the right line, place it right, like every little thing, because you're going so fast and everything's happening so, I want to say like freely, or so like it's just happening on the fly and you have to just adjust. Those little movements are huge because you have to be so concentrated and know like if I feel something here or there, I have to shift away from it or shift my weight or pull my arm up. Like all those little tricks are just us being able to shift our weight to maintain that speed through the turn and stay on the right part of the board, which will allow you to do that.
Yeah. I mean, could you
Which can get super technical. Like you can go
Mhm.
all day. Like I
Yeah,
said, when
no, I
we
love this
speak out
though.
about it, we'll spend hours about one little thing.
Well, there was that. I remember there was that one carve where it was you doing the carve, and I was talking about
Mhm,
this carve, and you just came out of this barrel, and then you went and did this carve like right in the this like nice juicy section, and
mhm.
just like so much spray. You were going so fast, and you just put all that energy. What was going on in your brain when you were thinking about like shifting that weight, as you say, or are there any tips that you would give to the everyday surfer in terms of like getting a really good frontside carve, like the one I don't know if you remember that one, that's the one where we ended up chatting.
You repost it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it's just like managing the speed. Like when you're coming out of a barrel, like most likely you're flying. Like you're coming as fast as you can because you're in like the most power source of the wave and the barrel is just like pushing you through. So like my favorite time to do a carve is always right when you're coming out of a barrel. Like my favorite combo is to get barreled, like even if it's just like a little like shampoo, just like placing myself right there because when I come out of it, I know like I'm gonna have like unlimited speed. Um, and then basically after that, as I'm coming out, I'm just like figuring out where I'm gonna be able to harness that speed the most. So whatever's coming at me and it's gonna match that speed is gonna allow me to push even harder and actually generate more speed through the turn. Because essentially, when you're doing a turn, once you start pushing on your board, you start to slow down. And I feel like a lot of times when guys start slowing down is when it gets a little tricky because they don't really know what to do. Like, oh, I might not be able to finish the turn, and then like you might dig a rail or something. So it's about finding that place where you're going to be able to push hard and maintain the speed all the way through. But most of it is just me getting way back on my tail. Like
Mm,
a lot of times you see surfers, like they come out and their stance is kind of small, and then you'll see that back foot just go whoom, and it'll shift all the way back. Like that's why I actually wear a tail pad, because I'll shift it back, and once I feel the kick of the tail pad, I know like, okay, my foot's in the right place, and I'm basically just gonna lay everything into it. And for me, I don't know if it's like good technique or whatever. I learned later on that it's not really the best technique, but for what feels good to me, all I like to do is just like push as hard as I can on the tail, and then try and shift my weight from my tail to like just basically whipping my head over my front shoulder.
mm,
Because I'm just anticipating that the more force I put into that turn, it's going to redirect really quickly.
yeah.
And like the more speed you have, the harder you have to push, and the quicker you're going to have to like transition that weight. Where throwing the head over the shoulder is like a huge thing for me. I learned that from actually Fred Pataccia. He told me like, he's like, dude, you're not turning your head when you turn. So you're like stopping the turn halfway. Like if you
Mm,
turn your head, everything will follow through.
right.
So like that was a huge tip for me to like finish my turn all the way through. And like at a high speed, it's kind of hard because I was so concentrating, like sinking my tail in to make sure I don't slide out, that I just like,
Right.
my head just locks. But once I was able to figure out how to like push hard and then simultaneously like shift that weight and then turn my head
Mhm.
over my front shoulder, everything just kind of flowed through, because you're using the speed, you're using the momentum, and then how hard you're pushing is gonna like bring you out of the turn.
Man.
So a lot of the time it's just like that little like just looking over will help all your body weight transition. And I felt like that
Mhm.
was a huge factor. And wherever your head goes, the rest of your body will follow, I believe. And my arms have been I always thought my arms were always kind of wild, because I kind
Uh-huh.
of just like lay everything in with my lower body as hard as I can. And then over time I learned like if I place my hand here or here and then shift it, it'll help with that shifting of the weight.
Mm, got it. Man, I'm sure with you as well, like you've done so many of these carves, you're just
Mhm.
like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna lower this. I'm just gonna lower my arm like 1 degree, and then you're gonna like
Yeah.
experiment with that. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna tweak it another. You're just like getting so into the minutia, but that's the reason why your cards look so insane as well. So that's super exciting.
Um, yeah, I think like to keep it simple, I think the
Yeah.
head movement was huge.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
coming out and then you being able to push through the turn on your tail, and all you got to do is turn your head, and then everything else will kind of like naturally your body will shift the weight and try and like rebalance itself. And
Yeah.
then through that and through repetition you'll figure out like, oh, that felt good, or this felt good, or maybe if I do this, then it'll make that a little easier. But
Right. Right. Right.
the head turning was definitely a huge tip. So
Oh,
thanks, Freddie
that's
P.
that's gold. That's gold. And so, what is it like being a dad now? Are you trying to raise another pro surfer and keep the the Lau family tradition going, or what's the plan?
Yeah, yeah. Being a father is life changing. It's been awesome, and it's a whole nother realm of life that I'm learning to adjust to, and I'm enjoying on the way. But it's definitely a transition from going to be like surfing was my baby, and I put all my effort and all my passion and my love and all my energy into it every single day I woke up. Now I got to balance this love of my child and my wife and our family that we're building right now. So it's been a transition for sure, and it it's been awesome though, because I've learned so much about myself, and just raising a child is so, I feel like it's the you really understand the meaning of life, and
Yeah.
it's making the little moments every day so beautiful, and I just can't wait to be able to share what I know with my child and my daughter. And my love of the ocean is my first thing that I just want to pass on to her. And I'm not too sure about the whole professional surfing route or whatever. I'm going
Right.
to kind of let her decide for herself, but I definitely want the love of the ocean to be instilled with her, and be comfortable in the ocean, and know that this is a resource for us, not only as just being a human, but as a Hawaiian. The ocean is such a big part of our lifestyle and our culture and stuff. So the main thing I wanna, kinda offer to her. And, we've gone surfing, so I've taken her already. I can't resist,
Yeah, of
we're at the
course.
beach, I might as well just throw you on a board and paddle around, and she loves it, so I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, I saw that one clip where it's right on there. It's like, man, you look you look so happy right there. You look
Yeah,
more happy than getting barreled that pipe almost, you know? Like, yeah, I
it
know you guys
was.
done the same thing, you know, but
It was.
that's
It was
awesome.
awesome, and, those little moments have been, like, amazing for me, and I never thought of, like, feeling those feelings of, like, this feels better than when I'm surfing, to watch her be so stoked riding a wave, and, to know how I feel when I ride waves, like, to be able to pass that on is amazing, so it's been super fun.
What's it like been working with ABBA? Really cool, like, what you guys are doing, like, not many
Yeah,
surf breaks, I'm like, "Oh, I would actually rock that stuff," but, like, I would actually rock,
awesome.
so
Yeah, yeah, working with Ava has been great, as I was in a real, pivotal time in my career, a few years ago, and it was just like a little tough with what everything that was going on in the industry. And the time that I made the switch over to Avo was just like right before those huge changes with board riders and the whole, Quicksilver, Billabong, Ruka, everything kind of, unfolded. And I was in a little tough spot. My daughter was about to be born, and you know, Quicksilver is in a tough spot to where they were saying they might not be able to support me. I didn't know what the future held with them. And, one of my good friends, Kekoa Kazumero, started a brand, and basically we got to talking. I told him where I was at and what my year was looking like, and kind of open up to him about what I was going through. And, it was super cool and organic in a way where he was just like, well, let's see if, I can help you out. And I'd be stoked to, you know, have you be a part of the brand. And since we're boys and stuff, it only makes sense. And it kind of just happened like that. And then naturally, I grew closer with him, and he let me in on a lot of what was going on with the brand and his vision and all the things that he wanted to do. And you know with my shift of being a father, and kind of shifted my focus to like the next generation, and like doing things in that sense, it was kind of like a perfect time to have this transition. And it's been awesome, and I've been able to work with him. He's been doing cool stuff, and the gear he's making has been super sick. Like, for me growing up and riding for these companies, a lot of the times it was just you didn't have much control about like design and like wearing stuff that you may genuinely like, and you're just kind of doing your job and finding support to support your goals and your dreams that you wanted to accomplish. And that's more so what it was like. But to be with a brand where I look at the clothes and I'm like, dude, this is super sick, and like I
yeah,
actually think that it fits my style and the things that I like. And it only makes sense because we grew up in the same area and we like the same things, so everything was just super organic and natural. And those things kind of really speak volumes to me. Like, anything that's like naturally grows into something cool is like, you can't really beat it. And
right.
it's been easy to work with him, and everything's been super fun. And like I said, I love the gear, so it's been a fun journey so far.
Yeah, it seems like, these smaller surf brands that are kind of local and homegrown, they've been creating the sickest stuff, I think about
Mhm.
you guys, think about Former and whatnot, like, and the board shorts with the black board shorts with the white and then the avant down the side of it,
Yeah.
those look sick. I'm probably gonna get some of those.
All right. We're gonna have to send you a box of those for sure.
Those are great, yeah. Alright, well, we're gonna work towards finishing up. Alright, so I got 3 last questions for you. What goes in your mind when you are riding a wave? What's on in your mind? Is it just blank out, or what is there an intention? What goes on in your brain?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, well, right now, what goes on in my brain is honestly what I want to feel. Like, I'm just in my head, I'm just so concentrating on what I'm feeling under my feet. And for me, I just want to I've spent my whole life competing and surfing to a criteria and like basically premeditating waves, where now when I stand up on a wave, I want to do whatever's going to feel the best. So I really have no plan when I stand up on a wave. It's more so like searching for this certain feeling. I can't even it's super hard to even explain what that feeling is,
Mm.
but it's just this feeling of like this freeing feeling that I'm searching for to where like I have so much speed and so much like everything feels so good. I feel like I can do anything on the wave.
Wow.
I'm always searching for that. So that's kind of been my whole motivation when I go surf is just like looking for that feeling. So I think I actually surf a lot different and I've been riding a lot of different stuff and changing a lot of I'll recently in the last like 3 or 4 months, I think I've rode a different board or a different set of fins on a board every single time I paddle out.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm looking for a
Uh,
different feeling and like this different sensation where it's just like this light, fast, like seamless this flow on this wave.
almost sounds like you're gonna be riding twin fins and just going full on
I know
alternative.
it does. It does. It does. And I actually have a super sick twin fin that I often ride in secret that Duke Ipa just shaped for me as a gift.
Sick.
Um, but it's one of my favorite boards. It's just like a 2+1 setup, but that's that feeling
Yeah.
is crazy. It's a 2+1, so I actually can surf it normally,
Yeah.
but that feeling is easier to achieve, I think.
Is it the dark twin? I actually talked with him
Yeah,
about, yeah.
it's
I
the
remember
dark twin.
seeing a wave that you caught and it was pretty sick.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was super fun.
I had a lot of good sessions on that board, and for me, it's it's that. It's just finding that feeling. So if I'm on a smaller wave, I like to feel a twin fin, but being in the barrel, I think is like the pinnacle of that feeling. To where you're
Yeah.
going so fast, time slows down, and you just feel light as a feather, and it's a crazy sensation. So in my head, when I'm taking off, I'm like, how am I gonna get that feeling right now?
How am I not gonna die as well if I'm surfing pipe? All right. What wave would you surf for the rest of your life?
I think pipeline.
All
I'll
right.
surf pipeline for the rest of my life.
Pipeline for the rest of your life. All
Yeah.
right. And then what board would you bring if you're stuck on a deserted island?
I would bring a 6'2" weight to coral
All right. Sick.
thruster.
Dresser. Okay, cool. All right, man. Well, thank you for joining. This was an absolute pleasure.
No way. Thanks for having me. Stoked to be able to do this with you.